Today we are revisiting one of the most fascinating and documented mass UFO sightings in American history, the Phoenix Lights. The date this historical event occurred was on March 13th, 1997. That evening was one of the most documented group sightings of an unexplained, massive flying object. Unfortunately, there are some major points that most people miss about that eventful evening. That night wasn't one event. It was two events, two separate sets of lights. Then, the represented officials, intentionally or conveniently, helped blend them into one neat explanation. This video explores the cover-up angle, not as blind belief, but as a pattern of distraction, ridicule, and selective answers that do not match what thousands of people said they saw. Let's walk through it carefully. The night Arizona looked up, it was on March 13th, 1997. Across Phoenix and the surrounding areas, thousands of witnesses report strange lights moving across the sky. Some people describe a formation, a V shape, not 5 separate points, not random lights, a single structured presence. Other people in the area later see a line of glowing orbs hovering, then slowly fading into the sky. This matters because the two-time windows don't match, the behaviors don't match, and the explanations don't match. But when the story gets told on the news, it often gets compressed into one thing: the Phoenix Lights. That compression is where the controversy begins. The official narrative about the two sightings was neat, clean, and closed. The first sighting was the V formation, which roughly occurred between 8 o'clock and 8:30 p.m. The claim is that there were 5 A-10 Thunderbolt II jets flying in formation from Davis-Monthan Air Force Base, and because they were under visual flight rules, the story goes, they used steady formation lights instead of blinking ones. It was then later stated that some of the witnesses mistook the formation for one single giant spacecraft. The second sighting of the Phoenix Lights that fascinated the residents, which happened around 10 p.m., was the many hovering glowing orbs lighting up the night sky. The official statement that they were illumination flares dropped by the A-10s over the Barry-Goldwater range. And if we stop there, if we accept that both events were correctly identified, the case is closed. But it doesn't stay closed, because too many details don't line up with what thousands of people reported. Why the questions won't die about the Phoenix Lights? Let's be clear. Skepticism is healthy, but it cuts both ways. When people say it was jets and flares, they're assuming the witnesses were confused. They included professional pilots. They included credible officials. They included people who've spent their lives looking at the sky. And several specific problems keep coming up again and again. Problem 1, the governor's flip. Years after the incident, Arizona's governor at the time, Fife Symington, admitted he saw the craft himself and believed it was otherworldly, and definitely not flares. This is the same governor who earlier held a spoof press conference to lighten the mood, bringing out a staffer in an alien costume. Think about that. If you genuinely believed your citizens were just misidentifying flares and jets, why mock them? Why stage a spectacle that makes witnesses look ridiculous? That isn't how you close a case. That's how you poison a conversation. Problem 2, the silent, massive craft description. Thousands of people described something that wasn't just lights. They described a solid, silent, V-shaped object. Some estimated it to be enormous, even a mile wide, while other people said it blocked out the stars as it passed overhead. That detail is hard to brush away, because flares don't block out starlight. Jets don't create the impression of a single solid shape that blots out the sky. Problem 3, reenactment failure. Researchers and skeptics have tried to replicate the event with military flares on later anniversaries, and critics say the recreations didn't match what witnesses described in 1997. Flares descend. They drift, often with visible smoke trails, and they are clearly falling. But many witnesses described steady lights, holding formation, moving with purpose, and, in the V case, attached to something structured. Problem 4. Radar silence. Despite widespread visual reports, some accounts say Sky Harbor and Luke Air Force Base reported nothing unusual on radar that night. Now, if the V was just A-10s, why would there be nothing unusual to report? And if there was something unusual, why would the public get nothing to see here instead of data? That combination, credible witnesses, visual scale, and missing or unavailable sensor confirmation, is exactly where cover-up theories are born. The trick: how you hide one event behind another. Here's the most important idea in this entire case. Even many researchers who lean conspiracy will tell you the 10 p.m. lights were likely flares, and that's not a weakness in the cover-up theory. That's the mechanism. Because if you needed to bury an earlier event, the 8 p.m. V craft, what would you do? You'd introduce something explainable later in the evening. Something bright, something filmable, something the media can replay endlessly. Then, every time someone says, "I saw a giant craft," the public record gets flooded with footage of drifting orbs, and the conclusion becomes automatic. See? They are just flares. Case closed. The physical impossibility argument. Here we try to find likely reason the government could not have been behind the Phoenix Lights. Let's address the heart of the dispute. Is it our massive spacecraft, or is it something off-world? Thousands of people reported a single object, not 5 separate jets, not a cluster of flares, a structured craft moving quietly, holding a V shape, sometimes described as so large it seemed to blot out stars. If you take that seriously, you immediately crash into a wall. How could something that size exist? If it was truly around a mile wide, building it in public terms sounds impossible. To put it in scale and in perspective, a wide-body jet can take weeks to assemble once the parts are available, but developing a new aircraft program can take many years. The International Space Station, far smaller than a mile-long craft, took years, many missions, and staggering cost and complexity to assemble. The total cost for the International Space Station to build was approximately $150 to $160 billion. This figure spans the full construction and early operational period, which was roughly from 1985 to 2011, and includes contributions from multiple countries. So, if a mile-wide craft existed in 1997, the natural reaction is, that can't be human. But surely our government has some of this technology, right? That's where the black budget comes in. Accounting systems could not properly trace $2.3 trillion in recorded transactions, says fact-checkers Reuters and PolitiFact. Black budgets, modular build, and the private sector loophole. If a mile-wide craft was man-made, it wouldn't be built in one giant hangar in downtown Phoenix. It would be modular, pieces built at separate facilities, separate contractors, compartmentalized teams. No single worker sees the whole picture. No single paper trail shows the full cost. Then the mile-wide spacecraft gets assembled in sections somewhere remote and flown as a test. In the shadows is the needed black budget funding. The classified programs that exist because of enormous sums of money are set aside for such projects and spread out over decades, hidden beneath layers of national security and contractors to build such hidden black projects. The world doesn't get a neat receipt labeled 1 mile wide UFO spacecraft, please audit. There's also a strategic reason to hide something that advanced. If you reveal your highest technology, you lose the advantage. You invite imitation. You invite panic. You invite arms races. So, The impossible argument doesn't kill the conspiracy theory. It sharpens it, because it forces the question, if it wasn't ours, whose was it? If we had such an enormous spacecraft at our disposal, why haven't we used it? This is the question that refuses to go away. If the United States, or anyone for the fact, had a mile-wide, silent hovering spacecraft since 1997, why hasn't it changed warfare? Why are we still building vulnerable carriers? Why are we still flying conventional aircraft? Why are we still fighting with the publicly understood physics that is mainstream? There are only a few possibilities. Option 1, it's ours, but too rare, too expensive, too strategically valuable to reveal, a break glass in case of war asset. Option 2, it's ours, but it's not fully under control, meaning it can't be deployed reliably. Option 3, it isn't ours. And what Phoenix witnessed was not a weapons platform. It was a magnificent presence from someone or something that filled our night skies. The mothership theory, command center, dock, hive. Let's talk about the structure and the function of the mothership that was viewed by many people. A craft that large isn't just transportation, it's infrastructure. Think mobile command center, think carrier dock, think hive. A platform that could dispatch smaller scout units, drones, or reconnaissance craft, and then recover them. Some witnesses reported smaller lights moving toward or into the larger V-shaped structure. If that detail is accurate, it fits the concept of a modular system. Not a random flare drop and not a simple jet formation. If the craft could carry smaller units, drones become the logical choice. Why risk pilots if you're testing unknown airspace and unknown exposure? And if you've got the power to hover silently, you may also have the power to disrupt sensors, which brings us back to radar silence. If something can manage its signature visually or electronically, you don't just get no radar. You get plausible deniability. Dark Nato and the Shadow Coalition idea. Now we step into the wilder territory, and we'll label it clearly as theory. Some people believe there's a shadow coalition that's sometimes described as a Dark Nato that operates above standard oversight, using advanced technology, potentially including off-world or reverse-engineered systems. One detail that often appears in these accounts is language. If such a group existed and operated globally, speaking native languages wouldn't be mystical. It would be required. It's a tactical advantage. It's operational necessity. It's psychological control. Interestingly, if advanced technology is involved, some people speculate that the public-facing government may not be the true holder of the source code. Instead, the technology could sit behind private sector walls, contractors, special access programs, and classifications that keep Congress and the public at arm's length and in the dark. Whether you believe it or not, the Phoenix Lights fits the template. Mass witness event, conflicting explanations, limited information, ridicule and distraction. The Warden theory and the perfect analogy. Here's an interesting analogy that captures why people find this so unsettling. Imagine an entity so far advanced of us that it can control not just technology, but our perception. Now consider David Blaine and a chimp. The chimp is smart enough to know something impossible happened, but not smart enough to understand how it happened or why it was shown. In that model, the Phoenix Lights become less like an accident and more like an act, a performance, a conditioning, a reminder. And the Warden doesn't need chains. They need informational control and dominance. They don't have to destroy the system. They have to manage it. They keep the inmates arguing about whether the bars are real or not. Was it a purposeful spacecraft showing, or just a technical glitch? Many have pondered on what exactly was the mysterious Phoenix Lights. Two main interpretations have emerged. Interpretation 1. It was a deliberate message, a slow-drip conditioning exercise, a show of force. Not necessarily for civilians, maybe for conventional military ranks, a reminder that someone else owns the airspace. Interpretation 2, a technical glitch, a cloak failure, an invisible ink moment where something that shouldn't be seen became visible. And if that happened, what would a cover-up look like? It wouldn't look elegant. It would look loud. It would look sloppy. It would look like flares at 10 p.m., a bright, explainable spectacle to overwrite the earlier craft in the public memory. Then ridicule, because ridicule is the easiest way to neutralize testimony. If you can make witnesses feel embarrassed, they self-censor. The governor's mock press conference wasn't just a joke. It was a social weapon. It tells the public, if you take this seriously, you're one of those people. That's not a deep investigation of something of such importance. That's maintaining perception and crowd control. Modern parallels and new technology. With modern technology, the general public has become more aware of the military's advancements. However, the public still questions the infrastructure of such a massive mothership, and could it be built by a human or something else? In more recent years, the public has been exposed to military footage that officials have acknowledged as real, while still labeling the objects unidentified. To many people, this feels like a shift from denial to controlled admission. Not full disclosure, damage control. The narrative changes from nothing happened to something happened but you don't get the data. And when people see clips or hear accounts suggesting objects that outmaneuver jets, ignore drag, or appear strangely unaffected by attempted interception, the Phoenix Lights stop being an isolated story. They become an early chapter in a longer book, a book where the public is given just enough truth to stop the screaming, but never enough to understand the mechanism. What a healthy society would do, and what we got instead. Let's go back to the year 1997 when a massive craft appeared over Phoenix. Instead of clarification, the public got confusion about what it was. What should a healthy society do if a massive, unknown craft crosses a major population center? 3 things. First, public data sharing, radar, sensor logs, timelines, released for independent analysis, not sealed behind closed doors. Second, citizen respect. No mockery, no press conference theater, no treating witnesses like gullible children. Third, formal inquiry, open hearings, clear findings, clear the uncertainties, clear accountability. But that's not what happened. What happened looked like this. A confusing night and a public narrative shaped around controlling the perception. Then ridicule to finish the job. That's why decades later people still argue. Because the explanation didn't end the questions, it multiplied them. The cleanest way to see the cover-up pattern. If you only remember one thing from this video, remember this. The flares don't have to be fake for the cover-up to be real. In fact, flares are the perfect tool. They create footage. They create spectacle. They create a reasonable answer. They give the media something to loop on television. And they drown out what people said happened earlier. So, the debate becomes, were those flares? Instead of, what was the craft that witnesses described before the flares? That's the trick. What do you think Phoenix really saw? So where does that leave us? We have the official narrative, jets and flares. We have persistent contradictions regarding the scale and the silence of such a massive craft, as well as the star-blocking observations and witness credibility. We also have questions around radar and response. We have a documented pattern of ridicule and distraction, and we have theories ranging from black-budget craft to something truly non-human. And we have one hard truth. Thousands of people didn't imagine the same thing at the same time across the same sky. Maybe they misinterpreted. Maybe they were shown something on purpose. Maybe something slipped. But the way the story was handled, the way it was packaged, simplified, and mocked, is exactly why it still feels like a cover-up. Now I want to hear from you. Do you think Phoenix was a test flight that went public, a deliberate message, or a technical glitch covered by a second event? And if the warden analogy is even partially true, do you think we're starting to notice the bars too much? If you want a part 2, we can go deeper into the timeline and the cover-up playbook, how institutions use ridicule and distraction events to manage public perception without ever admitting the core truth. Until then, keep asking questions and keep looking up. Thank you, and please subscribe to our channel. Get involved in the discussion, like and comment on the video. Have a great day and take care, and see you soon.